Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture 2 of Mission Main. So I am Akhil Rajratnam. So in our last class we were discussing regarding, we actually started from the advent of Europeans, what happened in the mid 18th century. So we already gave you an introduction regarding the syllabus and all, so you might be knowing what all things you have to study in this particular regard. Okay, alright, so we have discussed regarding the advent of Europeans, how Britishers became dominant in India, and also regarding some of the important policies, early policies of the Britishers, like the subsidiary alliance, the doctrine of lapse, and also the last topic was the drain of wealth theory, okay, which was brought by the grand old man of India, Dadabhai Naoroji. Okay, now we'll discuss some of the important British policies that defined the colonial rule in India, especially the administrative, like the kind of laws also we'll be discussing. Okay, so first topic will be the British policies. So this is a question, practice question. This is related to the Regulating Act, particularly related to the Regulating Act, but still other questions also similar, in the similar lines, other questions can also be asked. Okay, all right. So keep this format in your mind. The Regulating Act of 1773 marked the beginning of British parliamentary control over East India Company's administration in India. Critically examined the provisions and impact of Act on the governance of British on British India. Okay, so this specifically related to 1773, but maybe related to Pitt's India Act, a question can be asked, maybe related to other Charter Act, a question can be asked, or maybe related to the later acts like the 1935 Act or the 1919 or 1909 Act also, questions can be asked later. So keep this format in your mind. Okay, alright, so first act is the Regulating Act of 1773. This is one of the major acts which was enacted by the British Parliament. Okay, alright, one of the major act which was enacted by the British Parliament during this time. So we will see some of the important provisions of this particular act. First one was the the post called Governor General of Bengal was created. Okay, so you might be knowing that British India is consisting of different provinces. For example, the province of Bengal was there, the province of Bombay was it, the province of Madras was it, so like the different provinces were there. So everywhere, in every province, there will be governors will be there, okay, different governors will be there. So here, what they have actually done is, instead of the governor, the title of governor, they have added the Governor General of Bengal. So this made the Governor General of Bengal superior to the other governors, okay. So here we can say that they have slowly started centralizing. They have slowly started the centralization of the administration. Okay, so the first Governor General of India was Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of India in 1773. Okay, 1773, and also to support this Governor General, a 4-member council was also set up. Okay, so this council will be advising, same like how our ministers will also be working. The ministers will be advising the president, right? So like that way, a 4-member council was also established. So this council will be advising the Governor General on important matters. But again, this was an issue also. Why? Because you know, the Governor General, even though he is superior related to the power, many of these people in this 4-member council, they were opposing this Governor General in many important terms. So that actually created a stalemate, and the Governor General was not able to autonomously take decisions in this regard. So that was also another major issue with related to this. Okay, another important thing related to the judicial sphere is the establishment of a Supreme Court. Supreme Court is established in Calcutta. Okay, so what is our Supreme Court doing? Our Supreme Court will be have the territorial jurisdiction all over India, right? Supreme Court, we have Supreme Courts. High Court means it will be having in the particular state. Okay, and district, we have district courts also. So this is not that kind of a Supreme Court. This Supreme Court is specifically to deal with the British subjects only. Okay, British subjects, how they are actually interacting with the Indians, in all these ways only this Supreme Court is actually functioning. Okay, and it is not having jurisdiction over all British provinces also. It is mostly restricted towards a jurisdiction in Calcutta. Okay, so that was another important thing. And also, why the 1773 Act was created? Because the British Parliament, they understood that we should be regulating this East India Company, because many issues like the corruption, misrule, mismanagement, administration was not going good, governance was not going good. So they understood that. They understood that these people, they are actually looting money, and the British Parliament is not getting anything. British government is not getting anything. So somehow they wanted to have a control over this. So the important provision of that is this particular act is they have to submit annual reports on revenue and the civil levies, what these people are doing in this British India. So that has to be clearly reported to the British Parliament. Okay, so this was a major provision in this. Okay, all right. So after this, another important act is also coming. So that is a Pitt's India Act. Okay, Pitt's India Act is also coming after this. So that is coming after some years in 1784. Okay, William Pitt was the Prime Minister of Britain. So based on him only, this is coming. Okay, again, this was also an attempt to increase the control of the British Parliament, or maybe the Britishes, over this particular East India Company or their activities. Okay. Alright, so what are the provisions which are brought by this Pitt's India Act? One is establishment of a board of control. Establishment of a board of control. So earlier they were having a body known as Court of Directors. Court of Directors. So this is like I've already told you, the British East India Company was working like a corporate structure. So corporate directors will be there, like the CEO will be there, CFO. So like that way, that kind of a structure was it. Okay. So they were dealing things autonomously. So here a new body is coming, that is a board of control. So what will this board of control be doing? So they will be regulating this body. Okay. So who will be part of this? This will be having British government officials. So this was actually private body. Okay. So here we can see that here British government officials will be part of this. Okay. So some British control will also be there. So two control will be there. That's why it is known as dual control. One from the Court of Directors and another one from the board of control. Okay. So like that way, two dual control will be there. And also from now onwards, the company's territories, we have already seen how the company has acquired the territories through annexation, through alliances and all these things. So now everything, the British India, now this is officially the British possessions in India. Okay, it's not the property of East India Company, but it is actually the British possession. Whose possession? It will be, like the sovereign, it will be under the control of the sovereign, like the British Crown will have a control over this. So that's why it is known as the British possessions in India. Okay, and also this Pitt's India that has enhanced the powers of the Governor General. Okay, how? By reducing the council strength. Okay, I've already mentioned earlier that one of the important issues with the 1773 Act was the Governor General was not able to take decisions autonomously. Why? Because many of these council members were used to block the Governor General's authority, okay, due to many political reasons and many other reasons. So, if they are reducing the council strength, the Governor General will be having more control over this, especially Warren Hastings. During Warren Hastings, we have already discussed regarding the Anglo-Mysore War and all. So, during Anglo-Mysore War, Warren Hastings was able to take better decisions because of the reduced council strength. Okay, so that argument is also there. Again, they made this reporting stringent. In the 1773 Act itself, we have mentioned that the reporting to the Parliament, that was made very much stringent. Okay, now again it was tightened. They compulsorily have to submit the report, and also the parliamentary control also became very much important in this area. Okay, all right. Another important act is also coming. So that is the Charter Act. That is a Charter Act of 1830. So what are these Charter Acts doing? So Charter, we have already mentioned that in 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter to the East India Company. Okay, so through that charter only East India Company is actually operating in India. Started operating in India. It's a charter of 1600. Okay, 1600. So every 20 years this charter has to be renewed. Every 20 years this charter has to be renewed. So based on that, this is in 1813. So after that 1833 will be there. Before that 1893 will be there. 1793 will be there. 1773 will be there. So like that it was renewed. 1773 it was renewed. 1793 it was renewed. And after that it is 1813. So every 20 years this charter will be renewed. Okay. So in this particular charter is very important because many important changes were brought in this particular charter. Okay. So what were the important provision? One, obviously the renewal of East India Company 1600 charter. Okay, so here what they have done, they have actually regulated the trade. Okay, East India Company is a trade body only, right? Okay, so what this charter has given, they have given East India, the earlier charter 1600 charter, what they have given, they have given East India Company the monopoly to trade in India. Okay, and other British subjects were not allowed to use this position. Okay, now what they have done, now they have actually allowed Now they have actually allowed other British merchants, not just East India Company, other British merchants as well as manufacturers to trade freely in India. But still, for British East India Company, the trade in opium, they can have the monopoly in trade in opium and tea. Okay, other than opium and tea, other British subjects will also be having can easily freely trade in India. Okay, another important thing is the promotion of education. Okay, what education were they promoting this vernacular education? No, their purpose was to create more loyal servants of the Britishers in India itself. So they wanted to promote Western education or the English education. Okay, for that they have granted 1 lakh rupees also. They have granted 1 lakh rupees also. Okay, 1 lakh rupees as a grant to 1 lakh rupees as a grant to promote Western education in India, and also improvement of administration, because by as every year is passing on, the administration was becoming in a very deteriorated way. So they don't want to get the blame. The British government don't want to get the blame for the activities which they are doing in this particular British subcontinent. So what they have done is they have increased the British governmental control, whether it be the control over the military, and all these things were also taken by this government. Okay, all right. And along with that, so if the trade is becoming free for the British merchants and all, more people will be coming to India, right? So along with that, they allowed the Christian missionaries also to come to India for their Christian missionary activities. Okay, so this opened up the trade routes also. Okay, all right. Another important act is also coming. That is the Charter Act of 1833. Charter Act of 1833. Again, I have to already mention that the charter will be renewed. The charter will be renewed every 20 years. Okay, so this again here also the charter was renewed. So how the charter was renewed? Here it was, the provision was, East India Company had the monopoly in trade in tea and opium, right? Okay, so here again that monopoly was lost, but now they have the monopoly only to trade with China. Okay, only to trade with China. Again, their trade monopoly was limited. Okay, so now we can see that the British government want East India Company to look more into the administration. So what they have done, they have created a post known as Governor General of India. Okay, so earlier it was a Governor of Bengal, Governor of Madras, Governor of Bombay and all. So later it was like Governor General of Bengal. Governor General of Bengal. Okay, so now they have again created it as Governor General of India. So we can see that slowly they are centralizing. Slowly the centralizing tendency have increased. Okay, all right. So that is what it is given there. And also in the last act, we have already discussed that British citizens, the British merchants can come to India for trade. So now they have increased it to the British citizens are free to settle in India also. That provision was also added. Okay, another important thing is one more member was added to the this legislative Governor General's Council. One more member was also added. So that was a law member. So why this law member was added? Because it was actually an attempt to create better laws, so that it will be helping the Britishers to better govern this India better. Okay, so one law member was also added. So he was actually the head of the Indian Law Commission. Okay, so who was the head of this Indian Law Commission? A very famous person, that is Lord Macaulay. Okay, so Lord Macaulay was the head of the Indian Law Commission. Again, another important thing where Indians were demanding for a quite long time. So that was civil services reforms. Okay, civil service reforms. So they have attempted to open the civil services. There should be an open competition for the civil services. That was also one of the demands of, especially of the elite classes. That was also one of the demands. So Indians, they were having demand. Their demand was like Indians should not be excluded from writing the civil service examination. Okay, but still, due to this pressure from this court of directors and all, later this provision was nullified. So it was basically an attempt only. Okay, unsuccessful attempt, maybe we can call it like that. Okay, another important thing is no more new territories. Okay, so what was the British policies earlier? Initially they were having alliances only. For that they introduced something like subsidiary alliance system. Okay, so after that they wanted to annex this territory. So for that they created something like the doctrine of lapse, okay, doctrine of lapse, so that they annex. So all these things were having a lot of resentment among these communities, the people. So ultimately through this Charter Act, the British government said no more annexation. Let's stop all the annexation. Okay, so that is 1833 Act. Okay, all right. Moving on to the next act, that is 1853 Charter Act. So 1813, 20 years, 1833, and again 20 years it is 1853. So the next Charter Act. So here again the company's charter has to be renewed, right? So every 20 years it has to be renewed. So here in this charter, what they have done is they have renewed it for indefinite period. Okay, so now they don't have to have any Charter Act. So this will be the last Charter Act. Ideally it should be in 73 also, but this will be the last Charter Act, and here the company will be for the renewal will be for indefinite period. Okay, indefinite period. So that is a major provision. And another thing is separation of powers. There will be, now also we have the separation of powers, like judiciary is separate, executive is separate, legislature is separate. So here also they wanted to bring something like the separation of powers. Okay, so now executive will be under the control of the Governor General only. So now they want to introduce something like the Indian Legislative Council. So this will be the legislature. Okay, so now they have separated it. Indian Legislative Council has been brought in. So this later became the central legislative body. So what is this legislature doing? It will be creating the laws. So you see the transition, how it is coming. Earlier the Governor General was doing everything. Later a law member was added. Okay, so now that was just a member only. Okay, now what entire body itself is being created for the lawmaking process. Okay, and this was also again further expanded also. So but ultimately the Governor General will be having the ultimate control of everything. Okay, all right. Next, another thing, the competitive civil service examination. So here also we can see the transition we can see here, because earlier there was an attempt to include Indians in the civil service, and now they are actually introduced an open competitive examination for this civil services itself. Okay, all right. Again, this was also based on the recommendation of the Macaulay Committee. Okay, all right. Next one, a separate governor for Bengal. Separate governor for Bengal was also there. Okay, earlier the governor for Bengal was there, governor for Madras was there, governor for Bombay was there. Okay, later the governor of Bengal, he had to do both the duties. He has to be superior compared to his peers also. He was the Governor General of Bengal. So later he became the Governor General of India. So at that time, Governor General of Bengal was not. Now he is actually the Governor General of India. He is controlling the entire provinces also. Okay, so now a separate governor for Bengal was also introduced. Okay, all right. So that is related to the Charter Act. Now we are moving on to very important topic. So that is a 1857 revolt. We have already discussed how these people were having discontent, lot of discontent within the whether within the ruling class or whether within the common people itself. The common people in India, the people in India, they were having discontent over the Britishers. Okay, so all these things led to the 1857 uprising. We'll detail in a detailed way itself. We'll be discussing regarding what were the causes of this. It's a very important topic from the mains point of view. Okay, so here you can see the question which is asked in mains 2019. The 1857 uprising was a culmination of the recurrent big and small local rebellions that had occurred in the preceding 100 years of British rule. Elucidate. Okay, so you have to elucidate it. So what you have to do is, here you have to introduce what actually preceded this 1857 revolts. Okay, so many tribal revolts were there, many peasant revolts were there, and also some discontent among the rulers were also there. So all these things ultimately culminated in the 1857 uprising. So that you have to mention here. Okay, another question which was asked in 2016. Okay, so here itself we can understand that in 2019 it was us, 2016 also it was us. So it's a very important area for UPSC. Okay, all right. So explain how the uprising of 1857 constitutes an important watershed in the evolution of British policies towards colonial India. Okay, how the uprising constitutes an important watershed event. So what is actually the importance of this particular event? Okay, what is actually the importance of this particular event? So that is a question here. Okay, all right. Now let's move on to another question. This is a practice question only, not asked in your exam. The revolt of 1857 was more than just a sepoy mutiny. It was a manifestation of widespread political, economic and socio-cultural discontent. Critically analyze the causes, nature and consequences of the revolt. Okay, so this was again the practice question which I made. Alright, so we'll see what is actually the revolt of 1857. Okay, so we have to understand what is actually the root cause of this 1857. So here we can see that it's not just it's also known as a sepoy mutiny. Okay, revolt of 1857 or the sepoy mutiny. But the point is, it is not just the rebellion from the sepoys alone. Many other factors were also there. Economic factors were there, administrative factors were there, socio-cultural factors were there. Many factors culminated to form this revolt of 1857. So we'll see what were the important factors. Okay, so one is economic causes. So what was the economic cause? One is destruction of the traditional economic system. So how the British destroyed this traditional economic system? One, through their policies like the land revenue system, like permanent settlement or zamindari system, or maybe the rotwari system, mahalwari system. All these things ruined the traditional economic system, and it created something known as a rural indebtedness, because they had to go to the money lenders, and obviously they'll become from poor, they'll become more and more poor. So this situation was also there. Okay, and obviously the decline of Indian artists. How it happened? Because of the deindustrialization. According to the drain of wealth theory by Dadabhai Naoroji, we can see that the Britishers were using India as a mere raw material provider. They used to buy it from cheap, and they used to sell it. They used to make the goods for cheap in Britain, and they used to bring it back to India and sell it for the higher price. So in that way also they were deindustrializing India. Okay, because they can make it cheap there. In India, the artisans were doing it in a handlooms only. Okay, so at that time obviously they cannot sell it for a cheap rate. So people will be buying for cheaper products. Okay, so like that way they spoil the handicrafts industry. Okay, so no industrial development, and obviously administrative costs was also there. Rampant corruption. This is something which even Britishers were also fed. The British government was also fed up with. The East India Company, the officials were very much corrupt, and also the British governance is something very much new to India. Especially already mentioned that the Calcutta Court was also set up. So these kind of governance that was not aligning with the traditional judicial systems of India. So that was also one of the major issues. Okay, obviously they don't know how to govern India. They don't know how to govern India. They don't know what is actually the social fabric of India. That was also issue. That led to the socio-religious cause also. One, obviously they have this racial arrogance. The white racism is also there, because they think that they are superior. They are the white people, so they are superior to anything. So that kind of feeling was also there with the Britishers. And also there is something known as a missionary theory. Okay, missionary conspiracy theory was also there, because in earlier act itself, 1853, 1833 Charter Act also, slowly they were increasing the British inflow to India, and in that Christian missionaries were also there. So they had a feeling like the missionaries were coming to India. Missionaries were coming to India for converting Indians in bulk. Okay, so this kind of conspiracy theory was also there. Missionary conspiracy theory. So that was also there, and government was interfering in the traditional practices, even though we know that what they did is right. For example, the abolition of sati. Sati was an evil practice, so sati was abolished. Though they did a lot of things in the abolishing this widow marriage, supporting remarriage. So like that way, many of the progressive things which they did also didn't come out well. And this was also something which the people were not liking. Okay, people were abolition of sati, even though it is good, people were not liking it, because they were interfering in the traditional practices. Okay, taxation of the religious property. So this was also another thing, and obviously many outside events also influence these people. For example, many of the wars in which Europeans were there on the other side, so Asia was able to, or maybe the non-Europeans were able to have an upper hand in that. For example, the Afghan wars. First Afghan war. So in that Britishers suffered a lot of losses, even though the British had some upper hand, but they suffered a lot of loss in the Afghan war. And also we have already discussed regarding the Punjab wars. Punjab. Again, there also Britishers won. Ultimately, they won, but still they were able to, Indians were able to inflict a lot of damage to the Britishers. The Crimean Wars and also the that's British was not there, but it was against the Russian Empire, the Crimean War. So there also the European power was in the opposite side. Okay, so all these things influence the revolt mentality of these Indians. Okay, but ultimately it was why it is known as Sepoy Mutiny, because the trigger event was a discontent among the Sepoys. Discontent among the Sepoys. Okay, so why? One, obviously religious concerns. So the Brahmin Sepoys will be there. So they will be wearing this, the thread will be, sacred thread will be there. So they were not able, caste markers were not allowed to in the military. And also they introduced something known as a greased cartridges. The Britishers introduced something known as a greased cartridges. Okay, so what do you mean by greased cartridges? Greased cartridges means right, this is actually the rifle. So in that, inside this cartridges will be there. So you have to bite this cartridge, and after that you have to put it in, you have to dip it. Okay, so like that. So these grease cartridges will be having the fat of both cow as well as pig. So cow is sacred for Hindus and pig is not allowed for the Muslims. Okay, so that was also something which is affected both these communities, both Hindus as well as Muslims. So that is one of the major reasons which they had. Okay, and also Britishers had enacted something known as a General Service Enlistment Act. General Service Enlistment Act of 1856. Okay, so according to this particular act, they had to these soldiers, the sepoys, they had to mandatorily serve in the foreign lands, in the foreign wars in which Britishers or Europeans are party of. Okay, so according to Hindu belief, if you are crossing the sea, it is not considered as a considered good for you. Okay, so that was considered polluting the religious beliefs of the Hindus. So this was also something which was not in favor of the Hindus. And obviously the Britishers, compared to the British soldiers, this Indian soldiers, they were paid very low salary, and also discriminatory treatment was also there. Okay, so through the General Enlistment Act, they had to go to serve in the other countries, foreign land also, but they were supposed to get a foreign service allowance, even though some were ready to go, but still they were denied a foreign service allowance also. Okay, and another important thing is annexation of Awadh. Okay, so we have discussed two important policies, subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse. So in this, Awadh was annexed. So Awadh was actually the home for a lot of sepoys. Okay, a lot of sepoys were maybe it's even called as a sepoy homeland itself. Okay, so this also hurt the sentiments of the majority of this sepoys. Okay, even I've already mentioned that doctrine of lapse. Why they have introduced doctrine of lapse? Because even they were not able to justify this. What is doctrine of lapse? Because they wanted to have good governance. So how will doctrine of lapse give good governance to them? Even Britishers were not able to justify this. Okay, and also like many past mutinies were also there. One, tribal revolts were there, peasant revolts were also there, and also in the sepoys itself, many of the mutinies like the Bengal Mutiny, the Vellore Mutiny, the Barakpur Mutiny. So like that way, started from 1797 to 1824. Okay, so all these things were influencing the sepoys to revolt against the Britishers. Okay. Alright, so how this revolt actually spread? We'll see the spread. So it started in Barakpur. And you might have heard the name. It is Mangal Pandey. Okay, so he was a sepoy. So what he did, he actually revolted. And he attacked the British officers, and ultimately he influenced the other sepoys also to mutiny. Ultimately, Mangal Pandey was captured and he was executed, but still he started something which spread all across the country. Okay, so what started in Barakpur, slowly it went to the other cantonments also. Okay, and also many other centers were also there. Okay, one, it was Delhi was there, and also here the leader was Bahadur Shah Zafar. He was a Mughal ruler, even though he was a weak ruler, but still Mughal had a very long history of leadership in India. So they accepted, everyone, irrespective of the religion, they accepted Bahadur Shah Zafar as a leader of this particular movement. Okay, and also we had Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai. She was discontent that due to this doctrine of lapse, Jhansi was annexed. So like that way, Kanpur we have the Peshwa Nana Sahib. The Marathas were also having not good, the relation with British was also weak, and we have already discussed that. Lucknow, the Begum Hazrat Mahal, Barakpur, it was started by Mangal Pandey, and Meerut, many other sepoys also mutinied. Okay, so this was actually what happened, but still the revolt had very little impact, even though this is we can say that maybe Savarkar and all called this as a first war of independence, but still the impact which this was able to make was very much limited. Okay, we'll see why the impact was limited. One, the limited participation. Okay, limited participation means what? It was only among confined to the north as well as central region. Okay, you see this itself, you'll know. See here only. So India means it should be here. This is also part of India. This is also part of India. So this is confined only to this area, northern part of India. Okay, it didn't reach the lower level of India. Okay, and another thing is no pan-Indian unity was it. So everyone was fighting for their own cause. Jhansi Rani was not fighting against the British rule in India. She was fighting because she didn't get the power. Okay, like that way everyone was fighting for their own local causes. So no pan-Indian unity was there, and no one was able to give up leadership also. Bahadur Shah Zafar, he was already a weak ruler. Okay, even though he was part of the Mughal, he was not able to give the pan-Indian leadership to this particular thing. So that was also there. Okay, class divide. So this was confined to the very less class only. For example, the sepoys or maybe the rulers. So other than that, there were many people who were benefited from the British rule. For example, the zamindars. The zamindars who were the intermediaries. We have studied in the zamindari system or the zamindari system or the permanent settlement system, and also the educated elites. So they were having their say in the British. Some of them were working for the British also. So these educated elites were taught in this Western education. They were also there. Another thing is the poor resources. Okay, so the Britishers will be fighting with their advanced guns and all these things, but Indians will be fighting with the outdated sword and all these things only. So that was also one of the reasons why this didn't take off well. Okay. Alright, so obviously no unified ideology. Everyone was fighting for their own cause. Okay. Alright, so what were the consequences? One, obviously now the Britishers understood, okay, now we have to change our route. It's not for the benefit of India, but still it should not affect the Britishers. So like that way, they wanted to introduce some administrative changes. Okay, so we'll see the administrative changes and also military reorganization. Why? Because it started from the sepoys only, right? So obviously they have to reorganize the military also. Okay, and also they have to bring something like the divide and rule policy. Earlier also I've mentioned it, like they introduced something like the marital race theory, because they, for example, the Sikhs were considered superior in the military, so they were more loyal to the they were considered more loyal to the British army. So like that way, they introduced a policy of divide and rule. Okay, all the things deepen the racial divide among the Indians. Okay, however, even though they introduced some reforms also, it was not for the favor of the Indians. Okay, earlier they introduced something like the reforms, like the abolition of sati, supporting the widow remarriage and all, but now they kept their say out of the reforms, and now they focused on only exploitative governance. Somehow they wanted to extract the money as well as they want to be in the power also. Okay, but ultimately all these things led to the rise of some nationalist elements in India. Okay. Alright, so we'll see what were the administrative changes which was brought by this thing. Okay, the first one was the Government of India Act 1858. Government of India Act. So earlier we have discussed regarding the Regulating Act, the Charter Acts and all. The Charter Act was renewed for indefinite period of time in 1853. Okay, so now this is the Government of India Act 1858. This is something which has brought in a lot of changes. Okay, so till then, who was actually ruling in this Indian subcontinent? Who was actually the head of this British India? It was a East India Company. So now East India Company is gone. There is no entity like East India Company. Now the company rule has ended, and who took the control? It was the Crown. Okay, Crown means the British monarch. The British monarch. So now India is actually part of Britain, officially part of Britain. It's not a possession in British possession in India, but it's actually part of India itself. Okay, so earlier the Governor General was a top person in India. So now it will be the Secretary of State. Okay, so who is the Secretary of State? He is actually part of the British cabinet. He is actually part of the British cabinet. Okay, like a minister. like a minister. Okay, so he will be controlling the affairs of India. Okay, but still one person has to be here in India, right, to control the things. So he'll be reporting to the Secretary of State. Okay, so who will be controlling things in India? So that will be a new post known as Viceroy. New post known as Viceroy. Okay, so what they did is, like earlier we had Governor General of India. So now this Governor General of India became the Viceroy. Some changes were there, but still ultimately this is what happened. Okay, so Governor General of India became the Viceroy, and also there was a Council of India to advise this Secretary of State. Okay, 15 members. So they will be assisting the Secretary of State in how they have to rule in this continent. Okay, and also we can see that all these things, what is it showing? It is showing that there was a centralization. There was a centralization. So they started centralization in 1773 through the Regulating Act. So now they have slowly increased through the Charter Acts and all. So now this ultimately we can see that now the complete control is in the British Crown. Okay, so now this is a British territory itself. India is a British territory itself. Okay, alright. So everything will be under the control of Crown. So whether it be civil rule, whether it be the military rule. Okay, and another thing, no interference in religion or maybe any social reform itself. Now everything will be Indians can decide whatever they want. Now Britishers just want to exploit and they want to get the money. That's it. Okay, so what was impact on Indian administration? One, there was no there was no Indian representation. Okay, earlier also we had no Indian representation. The Viceroy, the Governor General will be ruling, and all these things will be British people only. Same thing happened. Okay, so earlier the East India Company was exploiting. Now the British Crown directly it's exploiting. Okay, so this is what, like we have seen in the Rothwari system and the permanent settlement system. Permanent settlement system, zamindars were exploited. Okay, here in the Rothwari system, the British East India Company itself was exploiting. Okay, so there is no change in the intent, but still the administrative structure changed. Okay, so we can see that consolidation of British control. Now no more annexation, nothing is there. Now it will be the control. Complete control will be there, and everything was authoritarian also. Okay, no benefit for the Indians. Okay, civil services, but some reforms were happening. Okay, were happening. Earlier we have seen in the 1853 Act under, but still now that was also stopped. The exams were held only in Britain, and the administrative power concentrated in the hands of Britishers alone. So they wanted to assert that also. Okay, and obviously there was no local self-government also. The entire structure was also changed. Now everything was a centralized administration. Okay. Alright. So like I have said, another important impact is this slowly fueled the nationalist sentiments in India. Slowly. Not in every level, but slowly it fueled the nationalist sentiments in India. Okay. So here we can see that the beginning of modern nationalism. Okay. We'll see a question. This was asked in mains 2019. To what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? Comment. To what extent did the role of moderates prepare a base for the wider freedom movement? You have to comment. Okay. Again, 2017. Again, now also you might have understood this is a beginning phase, or maybe the Congress phase is also something which is very important for the UPSC point of view. Asked in 2017. This was in 2019, this is in 2017. Okay. So why did the moderates fail to carry conviction with the nation about their proclaimed ideology and political goals by the end of 19th century? Okay. All right. Practice question. The Indian National Congress did not emerge in a vacuum. Several regional and political organizations laid the groundwork for its formation. Examine the role of such pre-Congress organization in the evolution of Indian nationalism. Okay. All right. So the point is, after the revolt, it's not like International Congress directly emerged. It's not like that, but still, after the revolt, slowly the nationalist sentiments fueled due to many reasons. So after that, finally, in regional areas, locally many organizations came. Okay, so we'll discuss that first. The beginning of the modern nationalism. What were the local organizations? What was actually the factors that led to the modern nationalism in India? Okay. First one, the influence of global events. Earlier also there were many global events, whether like the Afghan wars, the Crimean wars and all. So there the Britishers were not having they had to face a lot of they had to suffer a lot in these wars also, okay. And other than that, many new ideologies were also coming, like the French Revolution and all these things. So they have sown in many new ideologies like democracy, liberty, equality, the self-rule, the concept of self-rule. And so the Indians are also educated, getting educated, especially in the Western education, okay. So they have access to these resources. So this is coming into their mind also, okay. So this is in the global front, and also in the Indian level also the renaissance is coming. For example, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he is coming up with the talking against his ideological practices, and also other reform movements are also coming. Widow remarriage, against the widow remarriage, many things are coming against the widow remarriage. So like that, people are talking against the against the evils in the society. They want the country to progress. They want the country to progress. Rabindranath Tagore is coming, okay, and all other things are there. And this colonial modernization, okay, not everyone was in favor of this. This colonial modernization means the Britishers, for their own benefit, they have created infrastructure, and for example, railways, telegraph. So it was not something which was accessible only to the Britishers, because workers they have to transfer the workers also, right? So slowly this connected these people from the south to the west, south to the east, north, south. So all these connections also were happening. And telegraph, they were able to communicate. People from different areas were able to communicate. They were well educated, getting educated also. So this also helped the people, okay. And another thing is the Western education. The people were educated elites. So the nationalism started within the educated elites only, okay. All right. So all this was beginning in the rising urban middle class, okay. It was not in the top class. They were completely supporting the Britishers. The top class, the peasants, and maybe the people in the lower class, they were not at all aware of all these things, okay. So everything started with the urban middle class only, okay. So we'll see some of the important organizations during this time. The political associations before the International Congress. We'll start with different regions. One is Bangabaksha Prakashika Sabha. Bangabaksha Prakashika Sabha. So this was founded by the associates of Rajaram Mohan Roy. It's in Bengal, okay. So all these organizations are in Bengal. Next one is Zamindari Association of Landholders Society, okay. So they wanted to, it's very specific, they wanted to protect the interest of the landholders or the zamindars, okay. Okay, another one, Bengal British India Society, okay. Bengal British India Society, again they were welfare oriented, okay, welfare oriented, and even they advocated for more constitutional reforms like the civil service reforms and all these things, okay. British Indian Association, again in the same lines only. National Indian Association, again this is also in the same lines only. Indian League, they wanted to increase the political education, that was the case. And Indian Association of Calcutta, or the International Association, okay. So that was also something which championed the unified unification of this Indian political ideology, okay. Coming to Bombay, Bombay also had different well-known association. One was a Bombay Association. The most famous one was a Bombay Association itself, okay, Presidency Association. So this was founded by Badruddin Tayabji and Firoz Shah Mehta, okay. Another one, Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, okay, in this western Pune region. So this actually served as a link between the people and the government, okay. All right. So coming to Madras, we have the Madras Native Organization, or MNA, and also the famous Madras Mahajan Sabha. This was established by M. Veera Raghavacharya and B. Subramanya Iyer, okay. All right. Next is the International Congress. So these were the organizations which led to, they were the precursors of the International Congress. But still, what was the problem? They were fighting for their own individual cause. Same like what happened in the revolt of 1857. These people were also fighting for their own individual, goals only. That was not unified goals, okay. No unified goal was it, no unified leader was it, no pan-Indian unity was it. They were in localized areas only. So at that time only some people understood that we need to have a pan-Indian unity should be there, national unity should be there, and also the movement should be democratic, okay. It should be democratic. It should not be like everyone should be able to part of it, not just zamindars, not just the educated class, but everyone should be part of it. Democratic movement should be there, and also a political awareness in the pan-Indian level should also be. Political awareness means what? People have to be educated regarding what are their rights, and how they have to fight. That is also there. And what was their ideology? It should be anti-colonial ideology. It should be anti-colonial ideology and not any other selfish thing. Okay, so they understood that pan-Indian organizations needed to present the unified demands. Okay, so that was actually something which led to the rise of this Indian National Congress. Okay, Indian National Congress. So who was the founder of Indian National Congress? It was founded in 1885 by Allan Octavian Hume. So he was a British officer. Allan Octavian Hume. So he was an ornithologist. He was a like British political reformer, but a botanist also. Okay. So another important theory which is related to this creation of this Indian National Congress is safety valve theory. So why Allan Octavian Hume created this? Because he was actually supporting the Britishers. He don't want any other revolt to happen like the 1857 revolt. So for that he just opened a safety valve. So that there is a reduction in the discontent and they will be at least having the belief that Britishers will help them. Okay, so that is a safety valve theory. Some historians have already disregarded this. Okay, so the initial era of the Indian National Congress, we call it as an era of moderates. Okay, so moderates means what? Moderates mean they are not having any other extremist ideology. So these people are known as a moderate people. So they advocated for constitutional reforms. They advocated for constitutional agitations. So the basic ideology which they had is British will be giving justice to them. Okay, the main intent of Britishers is not repressive, but they will help them. Ultimately, they will be helping them. So they believed in them. These people believed in the British justice. Okay. Believed in the British justice and British reform. So they went with the constitutional agitations. So we call it as a 3P. Prayer, petition, protest. Prayer, petition and protest. So they'll be organizing petition, they'll be giving petition, they'll be organizing meetings, they'll be passing the resolutions and all these things will be passed. Okay, and obviously everything was limited within the educated class or within the leaders alone. Okay, constitutional reform means better acts. Administrative reform means like the civil service reforms and will be considered in this thing only. Okay, and also they have established something like the British Committee on Indian National Congress. So this was established in London. So they understood that everything is coming from Britain only. So ultimately, maybe whatever these people are doing, the Britishers are doing in India, maybe they were not aware of. The British government is not aware of. So they established something in London so that they can directly negotiate with them also. Okay, so that was also there. And also they introduced something like the economic critic, like people like Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Datta. So these people, they understood what is actually the true character of this British exploitation. Okay, so that's why poverty and un-British rule by Dadabhai Naoroji, he introduced the drain of wealth theory and all. Okay, and also they advocated for the civil rights for the common people also, like freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of press. So all these things were also part of their ideology. Okay, all right, but still they had a lot of limitations were also there for them. Important leaders are Surendranath Banerjee, Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, W.C. Banerjee and Firoz Mehta. Okay, all right. So what were the achievements of this moderates? One, they were able to awaken the nationalist sentiments. So till now, it was there was no pan-Indian unity. Okay, everyone is fighting for their own cause. So here he ensured that he awakened the nationalist sentiments or the modern ideas like the liberalism, like the democracy and all these things, and they were able to reveal the exploitative nature of this colonial rule. Okay, like the works by Dadabhai Naoroji and all. Through this they were able to create, and obviously this is something which the first thing against a colonial rule. So this is actually the foundation of the future movements. Okay, so what were the criticism? One, their social base was very narrow. It was constrained within the elite class only. So their social base was very narrow in the sense it was within the elite class only. So they don't believe in the participation of masses. They thought, okay, we will be saying what is good for the masses. Why we have to involve them also? So that was not there. And obviously they failed to reorganize the potential to a broad-based national movement. So whatever they did, we cannot call it as a national movement. Their cause was national only, but still whatever they did, it was not a national movement like what Gandhi and all did in the later time period. It was not the case. Okay. All right. Now moving on to okay. So now these people. So these were the criticism. So these were the criticism which this moderates were facing. Okay. So now the people who have criticized, they thought, okay, why not we provide an alternative? Why not we provide an alternative? These moderates were not able to satisfy what we were actually doing. We were actually giving. We were actually showing. Okay. At that time, we have to satisfy. We have to do something so that these criticisms can be overcome. So that's why some people created this extremist ideology. Extremist ideology, which was which was against all this criticism against the moderates. Okay, so extremism means little more aggression will be there. Little more aggression will be there, and again, they didn't believe in the British justice. They didn't believe that okay, Britishers will be giving us justice. Let us go with the protest. Let us go with the petitions, and let's pass some resolution that then Britishers will be doing. No, that belief, the initial ideology which the moderates having, they discarded that entire thing itself. Okay, and there were many trigger factors also which led to the emergence of this extremist phase. One was the failure of the British government to meet many demands. Okay, especially the bubonic plague which was there in 1896 to the early 1900s. So there was a plague was there. So British offered many concessions. Were there, but they were not able to give that. They were not able to give that concessions to the promised concession. That was one of the things. And also they believed in self-reliance. They believed in self-reliance. Okay. So the moderates believed that the Britishers will be giving us everything, like the education, like the infrastructure, everything they will be giving. The moderates, extremists believe that no, we will be able to give education. Mean why we are not qualified for that? We can give the education. And also they believed in the mass participation, which the moderates disregarded. Okay, they thought we need to ensure that more people are there in the loop. Then only we will be able to have a better bargaining power. That was also there. Okay, obviously international influences like the wars in which Britishers were, or maybe the European powers were defeated, like the Japanese war. Japan was able to defeat the European imperial power, Russia. Japan's victory over Russia in the 1905s. Okay, so like that way, many things influenced them. Okay, and also the reaction to westernization. Even moderates were also going with the westernization. So even though they were influenced with the ideologies like the liberal liberty, democracy and all these things, they were slowly moving towards this the dressing culture of this the Western education. So they were in favor of that. The extremists were not in favor of that. That was also there. And obviously they were not satisfied with the working of the moderates. So that is the main reason. Okay. Whatever the ideology is correct. They want a better governance, but they believe that the way the Britishers are doing it, that is not good. Okay, so the dissatisfaction with the moderates, so that was also there. Okay, all right. So these were the important extremist leaders: Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Aurobindo. Okay, some of the important leaders. So what they advocated, they went with a more radical approach. More radical approach means direct action, mass participation. So that was needed for them. And self-reliance. Self-reliance means what? Education. Western, discarded the Western education, discarded the Western industries. They went with the self-reliance. And also national education, vernacular education in vernacular language. Vernacular means local languages. Okay, not in English but in local languages. And emphasis on the passive resistance. Passive resistance. It's not like the political mendicancy which was followed by the moderates, but they want to resist this Britishers. Okay, so that was also there. So later this passive resistance, the form of passive resistance is the one which was brought by Gandhi: non-cooperation, civil disobedience, all these things. Okay. Okay, inspiration from the earlier revolutions, not just in India but from outside also, and also tribal movements were also there. Guerrilla attacks on the Britishers were also there. So they were influenced by these things also. And obviously, they were completely conflicting with the moderates. We'll see how this escalated in the later phase, will be seen. Okay. Also, the repression by the British governance, repression by the British government. Okay. So, whenever this moderates will be coming up with something, the British government will be saying that, okay, we'll be doing it soon, and they'll give a promise and they'll not do. Extremists were not like that. Extremists, they will be going with aggressions, like the mass movements and all these things will be there. So at that time, British will be going with the repression. Okay, brutal repressions will be there, but that will fuel them only. Again, they'll go with the movement. They'll increase the movement, and obviously they'll get more repression also. Okay. Alright, so another important event also happened which led to the split in this moderates as well as the extremists. So that was an action by the Viceroy, that was Lord Curzon. Okay, so question was asked in 2020. Evaluate the policies of Lord Curzon. And their long-term implications on a national movement. Okay, so that was a question which was asked in 2020. Okay. Alright. So we'll see what were the policies which was brought by Lord Curzon. So Lord Curzon was a Viceroy of India from 1899 till 1905. Okay, 1899 till 1905. He introduced a lot of policies. So if you're writing this question, you can evaluate the policies of Lord Curzon. Okay, so here we'll be discussing the negative policies only, but maybe you can write some positives also, not going into detail, but still he has introduced the Archaeological Survey of India, and also military and police reforms were also done. So these are some of the positive things of this Lord Curzon. Okay, so that will be affecting our flow. So that's why I'm going with only the negatives. Okay, alright. So first one was the Indian Universities Act. It was enacted in 1904. Okay, so this was especially in the colleges in Calcutta, colleges in the Bengal region. Okay, so what was the purpose of this Indian Universities Act? So he wanted to have more control over the university. Why? Because this university, this younger factions will be there, especially the extremist faction. Though they were growing, they were educated. University means they will be educated, and also they will be young. So they were if you take the moderates, they are not young. They are very old people. Okay, so they are young. So obviously they'll have this rising blood will be there within them. Okay, so this was introduced so that they can even have a control over the curriculum. Even the governance will also be centralized within the Viceroy. Okay, so that was the purpose. So here they want to interfere in the education field. Another thing is the Official Secret Acts of 1923. Okay, so this was aimed at protecting the official. The real purpose was different, but what they have said is aimed at protecting the official information against the espionage and all. Okay, so that prohibited unauthorized disclosure of any of the government documents. But the key is, even if it's a newspaper also, even if you are publishing something related to the government in the newspaper also, maybe you will be coming under the purview of this Official Secret Acts. Okay, many penalties will be like imprisonment can be there, heavy fines can be there. Like that way, this was also something. Again, this will also be, if you are seeing this is also looking like, okay, this is something to reform the university education, right? Again, if you come to the Official Secret Act, again, this also looking like a reform, but the actual purpose was different. Okay, again, the Calcutta Corporation Act of 1899. Okay, so what is the purpose of this? This is to have more centralized control over the municipal administration. So municipal administration means it will be like the roads, infrastructure and all these things. So if you are controlling here, what is happening? The political disempowerment of the local institutions will all be happening. There, even the local people will also be part of. Okay, so now everything is getting centralized. Okay, so that is the main purpose of this Lord Curzon policy. One is educational suppression, another one is a repression of dissent, like curbing on the newspapers and all these things. Another one is a political disempowerment of the local bodies. Okay, all right. But anyway, the worst policy of Lord Curzon, or the most controversial policy of Lord Curzon, came later only. So that was a partition of Bengal. That was a partition of, the most controversial policy of Lord Curzon is a partition of Bengal. So why Bengal was partitioned? What is actually the purpose of partitioning Bengal? You can see from the map itself, Bengal was a very large, Bengal was a province with a huge area, okay. It is having around 3,66,000. So that was a square kilometer area of Bengal, and also it was a very populated area also. But Bengal was one of the major areas which was actually the cradle of this revolution, okay, cradle of this revolutionary activities, especially the extremist level of activities. So they wanted to have better control of the Bengal, but ultimately the reason which the government gives for administrative convenience. So now also, if you want to have better administrative convenience over an area, what we can do? We can divide it, so that one province will be having a governor, or maybe a chief minister will be there, and maybe the district district collectors will be there. So like that way, administrative convenience will be there. But the real intent was not like that. Okay, so real intent was to divide the politically active Bengal. Divide the politically active Bengal on what lines? On communal lines. Okay, on communal lines, because if you see here, you can see that the western part of Bengal, this western part of Bengal, so this is a Hindu majority area. This is a Hindu majority area, present day our West Bengal region. Okay, if you see the eastern part of India, eastern part of Bengal, here you can see that there is actually Muslim majority area. Muslim majority area. Okay, so this is how the demography of Bengal was. So if you are dividing it into Hindu, Muslims and various ethnic groups, so that might cause more communal tensions, and they will be fighting among themselves, so that we can actually sit back, and the Britishers can sit back and enjoy and see what is it. So okay, so like that way they have divided Eastern Bengal and Assam. One is Eastern Bengal and Assam, another one is a Western Bengal. Okay, so the capital of this, or the administrative center of this Western Bengal was a present day the Calcutta, or the present day Kolkata region. So Eastern Bengal, it was Dhaka, or the present day Dhaka of Bangladesh. Okay, so that was how it was divided. Okay, so it was announced on July 20, 1905. So that was a date in which it was announced. Okay, so this is something which angered a lot of Indians, not just in Bengal, but a lot of Indians. So at that time, Congress was active, the more moderates, extremists, everyone was active. So they understood what is actually the real intent of the Britishers. Okay, so they understood that, okay, they are going with the communalism. It's actually the attempt to create communal division among them. So again, like how they are feared, this happened also. The religious divide created communal divide between the Hindus and the Muslims. Okay, so more tensions came up in this region, and also it was a political backlash. How? Because Bengal was a most active center of this nationalism. So that is getting divided. So that is getting divided means it will be an issue. Okay, so political backlash. That was also, they were fearing the political backlash also. And how it became an economic disruption, because some factories will be in, some raw materials will be in the Eastern Bengal, factories will be in the Western Bengal. So how the transportation and all these things, the people movement of the people, so that was affected, like the permit and all these things. So many issues were there in the economic front also. Okay, all right. So some of the important personalities associated with that, one is Surendranath Banerjee. Okay, so he led the peaceful protest, or maybe the boycott petitions and all was done by Surendranath Banerjee. He was a moderate. Another one was, obviously, when we talk about Bengal itself, the person who's coming to our mind is Rabindranath Tagore. So his medium was art, poetry, music and all. So he used his medium to spread unity among these people, okay, through his poems, anthems and all. And obviously Aurobindo Ghosh, he is actually part of the extremist. Okay, so he adopted a more radical approach like organizing protests, mass movements and all these things. Okay, all right. So as part of this Bengal partition, or protest in Bengal partition, the major movement which was adopted was a Swadeshi and the boycott movement. Swadeshi and the boycott movement in 1906. Okay, 1906 Swadeshi and boycott movement. So what was actually the purpose of this Swadeshi and boycott movement? It was targeting the British goods. Okay, so they in 1906 resolution was adopted in the Calcutta session that we should be boycotting the British goods. Boycotting the British goods because Swadeshi means what? We'll be using only indigenous products. Okay, indigenous products. So Britishers were dumping their manufactured items in India so that people will be buying it for cheap. Okay, now even if it's costly also, if you're going with Swadeshi products means what? The British people won't be getting the market. Okay, British people won't be getting the market. So affecting them economically and sending them a political message also. That was the purpose of this. So boycotting of British goods and also promotion of indigenous industries. We also have to industrialize. Okay, even though Britishers pushed us to a phase of deindustrialization, we have to organize and we have to do that. Okay, and also social reforms. Like earlier, even though Britishers came up with something like the abolition of sati and all these things, we were not in favor of that. Now it is not like that. We have to think about what is wrong, what is right and wrong. And now we also have to act accordingly. So that was also part of this. And also we need to go with more political mobilization, like the mass movements, maybe whatever is new there, self-rule, demand for self-rule, and all these things is also needed. Okay, and obviously for all these things we need unity among Indian people. Apart from the cultural lines and all these things, we need unity among the people. Okay, that was a purpose of it. However, there were many challenges were also there. One was the repression. Okay, so Britishers, the repression, especially for the moderates and all the for the extremists, people with extremist ideology, the Britishers went with the mass arrest, mass deportation, suppression of this freedom of press. All these things were also happening, and also leadership issues were also there. Aurobindo was arrested. And Bipin Chandra Pal, they were arrested. So all these things weakened the extremist movement. And also, even though they called for more mass approach, we didn't get the required mass reach. Okay, and also another important challenge was the difference in ideologies. We had two ideologies at that time within the Congress. One was a moderate ideology. Another one was the extremist ideology. Okay, so moderates, the old people, so they condemned the partition. Both of them didn't like the partition, but still they want to restrict the Swadeshi movement to Bengal alone. And move forward with the constitutional methods in the greater front. But extremists, they were of the opinion that we should expand the movement. We should expand the Swadeshi and the other movement. We should expand it, and this passive resistance, like the non-cooperation, civil disobedience, we should be expanding it to a wider reach with a better participation. Okay, so this was actually the idea of this extremist. Okay, also. Alright, so that was two important ideologies which we were having. But what was the positive things in this one? Even though the mass reach was limited, they were able to create a new section, that is a masses were also were able to contribute them. And also it was part of the cultural lines. Why? Because people like Rabindranath Tagore, this was actually the painting by Abanindranath Tagore, the painting of Bharat Mata. So like that, more people were able to, we were able to create more, reach more people through these cultural ideologies, like the art, like poems, like dramas, literature and all. We were able to reach more people also. Okay. Anyway, due to these ideologies, due to this difference in ideologies, ultimately they had to clash. And ultimately these two ideologies became, officially they became two different fronts. Now it's like some people are believing in moderate ideology, some people are believing in extremist ideology, but it is not official. They are all part of the Congress. Now they are officially going to split. That is in the Surat session. Surat session of Congress, they officially had a split. Okay, so we'll see the run up to Surat, how this actually happened. So in the 1905 there was a session in Benares. 1905 the partition is happening. So at that time, both of these extremists, people with extremist ideology and this moderate attitude, both of them condemned this partition, and extremists wanted to extend this partition, this boycott and Swadeshi movement beyond the Bengal. But moderates opposed this. Moderates said the boycott of the Swadeshi should be limited. So this was a question of what we'll be doing with the boycott movement. Okay, so this was the first clash which happened. So after that, in the Calcutta session, they came up with an idea known as Swaraj. Swaraj means what? It is self-rule. Swaraj means it is self-rule. Okay, but here also self-rule also they had different interpretation. the extremists were of the ideology that it is complete independence. We should be having the entire control. The moderates are of the opinion that we should be having control, but within the Britishers itself. That is fine. Okay, so like that way, all these things led to a rising tension between the moderates as well as the extremists. The moderates even hoped for more council reforms, but extremists wanted quick actions. Okay, so all these things led to the Surat session. So Surat session in 1907, even related to that session itself was a issue. The moderates wanted the session to happen in Surat. Moderates wanted the 1907 session to be happened in Surat because Tilak, if it's happening in outside Surat, means Tilak will be the president. In Surat means Tilak is from Surat, so obviously he cannot be the president of the Surat session. So they wanted it to happen here. Okay, but extremists, they pushed for Nagpur so that Tilak can be the president of the Tilapur, even Rajput Rai can be the president of the session. But ultimately, moderates wanted the session happened in Surat itself. Okay, so that itself was a conflict area for both of these parties. Okay, so ultimately, in the session itself, the talks were not going in a good way. They ultimately understood that okay, there is no room left for compromise, and ultimately the two factions became two. Okay, all right. So this is actually what happened in the Surat session. Okay, all right. So how the government reacted? Government obviously will come with the more repressive measures only. One is a Seditious Meetings Act of 1907. So this is to allow this, ensure that public gatherings are not allowed, because if these public gatherings meetings are there, means obviously that will be an area that will be a room for conspiracy against the Britishers, right? So they don't want to go with that. And also coming up with the Press Act of 1910. So this is also to curb the press freedom, like that way. Okay, and they introduce something known as a carrot and stick policy. You can write in your answers and all, carrot and stick policy. So what do you mean by carrot and stick policy? They'll be showing the carrots to the moderates so that council reforms will be coming, other reforms will be coming. So they'll be placated. But in other side, they'll be beating the extremists, so that beating the extremists will also be, the moderates will also be scared of them. So like that way, they uses carrot and stick policy. Okay. Alright, so impact was like national movement decline, like the leaders were arrested, the moderates are isolated because masses were not believing the moderates. Okay, they were in favor of the extremists only, and also due to this Bengal partition and all, there was a communal divide, communal tensions were also going on. Okay, alright. Anyway, in 1911, the partition of Bengal was annulled. Because of many reasons, the partition of Bengal was annulled, because a new ideology was bringing in, that was a revolutionary terrorism. Because of the revolutionary terrorism, there was a fear among these people. There was a fear among these people like, okay, something will happen. So, let's annul the partition, but we'll be moving the capital from Calcutta to Delhi. Okay, so this happened in the Delhi Darbar in which the King George V visited India. Okay. All right. Practice question. So next we will move on to the revolutionary activities in the early 20th century. Okay. So question: how did the revolutionary movements in the early 20th century differ from the moderate and extremist approaches within the Indian freedom struggle? Illustrate with examples. So you need to know the important revolutionary movements in different areas. Okay, and what is the difference? This was asked in UPSC Mains 2020. Since the 1920s, the national movement acquired various ideological strands and expanded the social base. So this is not just confined to the revolutionary activities alone. Many other activities. So revolutionary being one. So 1920s, Gandhian ideology is coming, socialist ideologies, leftist ideology is coming. Like that way, different ideologies are coming. So here also you have to include revolutionary activity. Okay. All right. So revolutionary activities in the early 90s. Okay. So why the revolutionary activities happened? One, definitely because of the anger against the British repression. Okay. And also they understood that Britishers were exploitative only. Okay. They understood that whatever the moderates are saying, whatever the moderates is saying is not right. We should not believe in the British justice, believe that Britishers will give us justice. And also the extremists, even though they were little more radical, they were also impatient. These people were also impatient with extremists because they were also not able to give any immediate concession. They were not able to give any result. The result was not there. And also international influences were also there. For example, like the wars in which the Europeans were defeated, defeat of Italy by Ethiopia, which happened in 1896, and also Russia was defeated by Japan. So, like that way, if you are using force against the Britishers, sometimes they will not be able to resist. That kind of feeling was also there with them. Okay. So, unlike moderates, unlike extremists, they use their own different ideology. So, here they went with individual heroic action. Moderates ideology was like pray, petition and protest. Okay. Extremist was like mass participation. Okay. More repressive, more protest. Okay. So, like that way, here it is not participation mass, but individual heroic action, and they went with the most violent activities itself. Okay. For example, like robberies were there, dacoities were there, robberies, even killing of these British officials, bombing, all these things were also there. Okay. Many conspiracies were organized during the period of World War I also. Okay. Now, we will see some of the important activities in different parts of India. So, we'll start with the Bengal itself. Bengal, the most prominent organization was the Anishilan Samiti. Okay, it was a Anishilan Samiti. The key event in this is the important leaders were, one is Khudiram Bose and Prabhulla Chak. Okay, so 1908 they attempted to kill the Kingsford. So, Kingsford, Magistrate Douglas Kingsford. So, he was actually the chief presidency magistrate of this Calcutta. They wanted to kill him for his actions. Okay, so for that they bombed him, but that attempt was not successful. Okay, so Alipore conspiracy case. So that was a trial of this case in 1908 to assassinate the British officials, and ultimately Khudiram Bose was hanged. Okay, key figures were Rashmiri Bose, Bhaga Jadin, Barindra Kumar Ghosh. Moving on to the next area, that is Maharashtra. Maharashtra, Vasudev Bhatke's Ramosi Peasant Force. So, this was one of the major organization in this area. So, they wanted to have an armed revolt against the, especially against this repressive force. So, one of the things which they have used is disrupting the communal lines of these Britishers. And also another important organization was the Abhinav Bharat Society. Okay, so again, this was also a secret society, independent secret society. So, this was founded by V.D. Savarkar, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. Okay, notable incidents, 1897, Chapekar brothers assassinated the plague commissioner Rand because of the bubonic plague, and they were not able to, like many of these, the extremist ideology also grew during this period only. Prominent leaders, Tilak Savarkar in Maharashtra. Okay. Next, moving on to Punjab region, Lala Lajpat Rai and Ajit Singh. So, they founded an organization known as the Anjumani Mohisban Watan. Anjumani Mohisban Watan. So, again, this was also a secret society which was established by Lajpat Rai and Ajit Singh, Sardar Ajit Singh. Okay, Ajit Singh was the uncle of Bhagat Singh. Okay, alright. So, again, this was also fueled by the British policies like famines, the mishandling of the famines, repressive land taxes, and British partition itself. Even outside India also, many revolutionary activities were happening. One is the India House, which was founded by Shyamji Krishnavarman. And also in Paris and Berlin, Madam Bikaji Kama was also active, and Virendranath Chattopadhyay was also active. Germany, there was a Berlin committee was there in Germany. Again, this was also a secret society. Earlier it was known as Indian Independence Committee also. Okay, so this was also an organization where they'll be mobilizing the people to fight against the Britishers. Okay, one major event which happened in this Berlin committee was Madam Bikaji Kama hoisted the flag. The tricolor flag was hoisted in 1907. Okay, alright. Anyway, these activities were also declined. The Britishers were able to repress these activities. How? One, by enacting the Defence of India Act. So, what is the Defence of India Act? Britishers can arrest anyone without any warrant, without any trial itself, and they can even detain these people without any trial itself. So, that was the purpose of Defense of India Act. Okay. Next one was the Montagu's promises in 1917. Montagu's promises in 1917. So again, Britishers promised to give gradual concessions to the people. Okay, so that they'll go with a greater Indian self-governance itself. Okay. Alright, another one is Gandhi's rise with non-violent strategies. Gandhi has in 1950 will go to the Gandhian phase. Next, it will be the Gandhian phase. So, the Gandhi's rise with non-violent strategies. So, that it was not, which is aligning with the moderate, which is not much aligning with the extremists, but it was not aligning with the revolutionary, but it was a new thing, the Gandhian phase of the freedom movement. Okay. Alright, so these were the reasons why, some of the reasons why this revolutionary activities declined. Okay. So after that, the British also came up with some concessions. The British were fearing this, fearing the revolutionary activities will be moving forward. Even the extremists were also fighting, the moderates were also fighting. So anyway, even new factions were also coming. So all these things led the Britishers to come up with new reforms, that is a Morley-Minto reforms. We will see some of the events which preceded this Morley-Minto reforms. Alright, the background is in 1906, some of the important Muslim leaders, prominent Muslim leaders, one is Aga Khan, Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka. So like that way, the prominent Muslim leaders, so they went as a delegation to Shimla to meet the then Viceroy. Who was the then Viceroy? It was Minto. Lord Minto was a Viceroy. So they went to meet Lord Minto in Shimla. Okay, so what was their purpose? They wanted the Muslims to have better political rights. Better political rights in the sense they should be having the right to elect Muslim representatives, because in Hindu majority areas they felt that the Muslims were sidelined. So they want the separate kind of they want separate electorate. So right for these Muslims to elect their own representatives. Okay, so like that way they went and met him. October they went and met him. They returned back and they thought, okay, we need a separate organization to do this. And even Britishers were also supporting this, because this created a fractions in this national movement itself. Okay, so they came back and they started the All India Muslim League. December 1906, the All India Muslim League was formed. Okay, All India Muslim League was formed to safeguard the political rights of all rights of the Muslims in India. Okay, and also the moderates here, especially the Gopal Krishna Gokhale. So he was also coming up with new ideologies like the self-governing institutions. In 1906, in the Calcutta session, we have already discussed that they have come up with ideas like Swaraj, okay, self-rule. So Gopal Krishna Gokhale has come up with ideas like self-governing institution. So all these things forced the British government to come up with some sort of or maybe the revolution activities were also going on. So British government was forced to come up with some sort of concessions. Okay, so that was that led to the Morley-Minto reform. So based on this, Indian Councils Act of 1909 was enacted. So what was the purpose of this Indian Councils Act? Earlier itself we have discussed like in the Charter Act itself we have discussed like the legislative function, the separation of powers, like legislative functions as well as the executive functions were divided. Okay, so in that the membership in this legislative council was very less. So the count was 16. So now they have expanded it to 60, so that more Indians can be accommodated in this. Okay, so they expanded both the legislative council. Both means it will be the provinces also, it will be there, in the center also it will be the provinces, it will be, the number will be varying. Okay, another important thing is, based on the demand of the Shimla delegation or based on the demand of the Muslim League in 1906, so they created separate electorates. So what do you mean by separate electorates? In an area, for example, if Hindu population is there, Muslim population is there, now what we are doing, now we will be having one representative for for all the communities will have one representative only. So everyone will be voting. So here it is not like that. The Muslim will have their own representatives will be there. So Muslim community will have candidates. So Muslims can vote for them, and ultimately he or she will be representing the Muslims only. Okay, so that is separate electorates. Okay, and also extension of the franchise. Franchise means voting rights. So slowly they want to extend the franchise, but again this was also very much limited. So what was the limitation in this? Limitation in the sense, the franchise was limited to the people who are having the wealth, like the land, property will be there, education will be there. So like that way, the franchise was also extended, but still again it was limited only. Another thing is the introduction of non-official majority. Official majority means those who are appointed by the Britishers. So that is official majority. So here they can have non-official majority in provincial council, not in central council, but in provincial council. And also this legislative council could discuss the legislations and propose the laws. They can propose, but ultimately the control will be under the governor. Under the governor only it will be the control. Okay. Ultimately the power of the viceroy was also increased. Okay. And Indian ministers were also allowed in the provincial governments. Okay, and here the executive council was not having any Indians. Okay, this is the legislative council. So here many Indians will be there, but here executive council there was no. In the 16 many Indians were there, but here in this executive council no Indian was there. Viceroy's executive council. So here the first Indian is coming in the executive council also. Okay, so that was Satyendra Prasad Sinha. So he became the first person to come to become the member of the executive. Viceroy's executive council. Okay, all right. So that was in 1909. Okay, a very important event is happening in 1914. So that was the World War. The first World War is happening in 1914. So World War was not good. It was something which was fought especially in the European area, but still the repercussions of this was going in other areas like India, Africa, everywhere also this was going on. Okay, so World War gave many hardships to Indians also. For example, the prices of the food were increasing, food prices were increasing, commodity prices were increasing, and also Indians were also forced to forced recruitment also was also going, so that British forces will be having more men personnel. Okay, all right. So against all these things, a new movement is coming. That is a home rule movement. A home rule movement is coming. Okay, one thing, they were not satisfied with the Morley Minto reforms. Okay, even though they said they said one Indian will be in the executive council, the legislative council will be expanded. Ultimately, the viceroy will be having the ultimate control. So they don't want to accept this. Now they want at least some self-governance should be there. That is home rule. Home rule means what? Home rule means some sort of self-government should be there, because in Ireland and all they were giving the Britishers were giving home rule. Irish home rule movement and all was there. Okay, so based on that, now Indians are also demanding that kind of a thing. So demanding this home rule, the home rule movement was launched in 1916. It was launched in 1916. Two important leaders, one was Bal Gangadhar Tilak and another one was Annie Besant. So this was inspired by the Irish home rule movement only. So what was the aim? One, either to give the dominion status or maybe some sort of a self-government should the Indian. Okay, so what they'll be doing? They'll be doing with the year-round activism. Year-round activism means political education. They'll be making aware of the people. They'll be making these people aware of what are our rights, but gaining more mass momentum. All these things will be coming. Okay, so two important leagues were there. One was the League of Tilak and another one was the League of Besant, Annie Besant. Okay, so two important leagues were also there. So Tilak's league, that will be covering the where areas in which Tilak had better presence, like Bombay, Karnataka, central provinces, these area. Rest of India, Annie Besant will be leading this home rule movement. Okay. Alright. So, ultimately this movement was also not able to gain any momentum. Why? Because lack of effective organization. This was also not able to reach the lower levels. Mostly it was limited to the urbans, the educated elites, or maybe the so-called middle class only. Okay, the mass mobilization didn't happen, even though they had this idea. They want to reach to the rural areas and other down sections also, but still they were not able to reach. They were not able to reach that level. Okay, and also the communal rights, the divide between the Hindus and Muslims, so that was also happening, and more communal rights were also happening. And also after this, the British again placated this moderates with more reforms, like the Montagu Canfor reforms will also be coming in 1917. And also leadership gap was also there. Tilak was again arrested. Annie Besant was arrested. Tilak was again out of the political scene. So this also created this also led to the decline of the home rule movement. Okay. All right. Another important event which happened during this period is the Lucknow session. The Lucknow session. So here we can see that some of the important factions, some of the divide which happened in India, divide which happened in the political scenario. So that is slowly declining in this period. Okay, declining in this period. So that happened in the Lucknow session of 1916. Lucknow session of 1916. So what all things happened in the Lucknow session of 1916? This was chaired by A.C. Majumdar, Ambika Charan Majumdar. Two important reunions happened. One, the moderates and the extremists reunion. Moderates and the extremists reunion. Okay. So moderates faction, earlier they were like, we'll go with only constitutional reforms. Now extremists were like, no constitutional reforms, nothing. Now they were able to reach a compromise. And also many of the moderate leaders, many of them were old. So now most of them have died. Now we can see that new ideology has been is having more acceptance. Now it is not like extremist reunion. Now the extremists are having more say, and they came back to the Congress. Another thing is the Congress and the Muslim League has come together. Okay, 1906 December, Muslims, the leaders, so they have created their own organization, that is a Muslim League. Muslim League was created, but now that was an ideology which was separate from, because they felt that Congress was caste Hindus. Congress was dominated by the caste Hindus or the Brahmins. So Muslims were not having any say in this. So that was their ideology. So that's why they created. That's why they asked for the separate electorates and all. Now they are actually joining. They are aligning with the Congress. We cannot say that Congress and Muslim League has become a single entity. No, but now they are moving with the joint constitutional demands. Whatever Muslim League is saying, it will be mostly acceptable for the Congress. Whatever Congress is saying, it will be acceptable for the Muslim League. So like that way, they want to join. Okay, and like their demands were like better expanded legislative council, better representation for both the parties, more Indians in the viceroys and governors general's governors executive council. So these were their demands. Okay, so why they have united? Because one, annulment of partition. So Muslim League was actually happy with the partition, because they will be having their own administrative area, that is the eastern part of Bengal. So now that is annulled, and Bengal is a single territory and capital has been shifted to Delhi. So that is not good for them. So another thing is Turkey. The war was going on, and Turkey had a Treaty of Sevres was it. Treaty of Sevres, Turkey was dismembered, and that didn't. Muslims were not happy with this, because they considered Turkey or maybe the Ottomans as a Khalifa. Okay, so that treatment was also not liked by these Muslims. Okay, and also more younger leaders like Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So he is coming, and he is having more progressive ideas like a nationalist stand, which is more aligning with the Congress. Okay, so that was also one of the reasons why they were going with this. Okay, now the provisions were like joint demands for self-government, fixed Muslim representation in the legislatures, and also more Britishers should not go with this economic loot of Indians. So that was also one of the demands which they give. Okay, so based on all these demands by this Muslim League, Congress, and also this revolutionary activities were also going on. So ultimately, Britishers had to come up with some plan. So that led to the Montagu's Declaration. That led to the August Declaration of Montagu. Okay. So who was Montagu? It was Edwin Montagu. Edwin Montagu. So Edwin Montagu was the Edwin Montagu was the Secretary of State, British Secretary of State during that time period. So what did Montagu said in this? This said that British government's intention to grant greater self-governance to India. So it will not be like we'll be ruling in the same way like how we have ruled. You will be having your say in the governance. So that's why it is known as the Magna Carta of India. Sometimes it is known as a Magna Carta of India. So they'll be giving better participation. They'll be giving better participation for the Indians in administration. So based on this Montagu's declaration, new reforms were passed. So that is Montagu-Chelmsford. So Edwin Montagu was a Secretary of State, British Secretary of State. Chelmsford was a Viceroy. Lord Chelmsford was a Viceroy during that time. Okay. Alright, so based on this, a new act is passed by the British Parliament. So that was a Government of India Act 1919. Government of India Act 1919. So here a lot of changes are being brought in this Government of India Act 1919. Okay. Alright, so one is diarchy at the provincial level. They are coming up with something known as diarchy. So what do you mean by diarchy? Diarchy means two important the subjects in which we are ruling. So that will be divided into two. One is transferred subjects, and another one is reserved subjects. Transferred subject and reserved subject. So what do you mean by transferred subject? Transferred subjects means earlier itself I mentioned that Indian ministers will be there. So these Indian ministers, they will have say in some areas like health, like education. So in these areas, the ministers will be ruling. So this will be the transferred subject. So this will be Indian ministers, and also other areas like law, other revenue and all this thing. So here the Viceroy will be having the ultimate say. Okay, Viceroy will be having ultimate say. So like that way, less important ones were transferred and the more important ones were reserved with the Viceroy. So this is diarchy and it was introduced in the, governor. So this was introduced in the governor in the provincial level. Okay. Another one, they expanded the suffrage. Earlier also it was like suffrage means voting rights. Okay. So earlier also it was for limited, like for this much education, this much property you have to own. Earlier slowly they were expanding it. Now they have expanded it little more, and women were also allowed to vote. Now women were also allowed to vote in this. Okay, so that is they expanded the suffrage. Okay. Alright, they expanded the suffrage and also they expanded the legislative councils also. Earlier we have seen that it was 16. From 16 they have increased to 60. Now they have again increased to 145. In the central level they have increased to 145 and also in the provincial level accordingly they have increased. And also in the central level they have introduced something like the bicameral legislature. Bicameral legislature means it will be having an upper house. So the Council of States will be there and also the lower house will also be the same like our Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. So like that this concept was also there. Again the separate electorates which was brought in the 1909 Act. So again this was also again further expanded. So in the 1909 Act it was only for the Muslim League. It was only for the Muslims. So now they have expanded it to more people like the Sikhs, the Indian Christians, the Anglo-Indians and also for the Europeans also they have expanded it. Okay, and but Governor General retained the substantial powers like the veto power of the Governor General. Everything was retained. Okay, he can dissolve the legislature, reserve the bills for his approval. All these things were also there. Okay, and earlier we had one person in the executive council of governor. Now that has been increased to 3. So from 1 now it is 3. Okay, so all these things if implemented, so they'll go with the re-evaluation. Re-evaluation that will be happening in 1929. That will be happening in 1929. Okay, so this were the major provisions of the Government of India Act 1990. Okay, however, the Congress or maybe the leaders were also not satisfied with this. Why? Because one, it is limited franchise. Even though they've expanded, they've included women and all these things, but still now only about 1.5 million in this big country of 260 million people, only 1.5 million out of 260 million people were only given the voting rights. We wanted universal adult franchise, but now it is only 1.5. That is not fair. And also the allocation of seats were also not good. Allocation of seats, that was also not good. And also the division of subjects, that was also not fair. The transferred and reserved, everything is under the control of the Governor General, the Governor only. That is also not. So also, even though three members at the Executive Council was that, ultimately there is no say in the center. Just members are only there, no say in the center. Okay. So this diarchy at the provincial level is not at all a practical idea. Not at all a practical idea. Okay. So they understood this, and the Congress as well as the other leaders like Muslim League, everyone disregarded this. Okay. Alright. Let's move on to question. Discuss the nature and significance of the early phase of Gandhian Satyagraha. Now, who is coming here? Now, Gandhi is coming into the scene. Emergence of Gandhi into the scene. Early phase of Gandhian Satyagraha. So, how did it mark a shift in the Indian freedom struggle? Many questions can be asked from the Gandhian era. So, this was asked in 2021. Bring out the constructive programs of Mahatma Gandhi during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. Okay. So, Gandhi era is very much important. So, we will see the emergence of Gandhi. Throw light on the significance of the thoughts of Mahatma Gandhi in the present times. Again, in an ethical point of view also, you will have to write 2018. Okay, so emergence of Gandhi. So, Gandhi, we need to discuss regarding a few points regarding what was actually Gandhi, what is actually the background of Gandhi. Okay, so Gandhi was born in Porbandar in Gujarat. So, he was a lawyer, he was a barrister. So, he was not able to get more clients or more cases in India. Ultimately, he went to South Africa. He went to South Africa and he was staying there for his client Dada Abdullah. So, he was a Gujarati merchant. So, he was staying there and he was appearing for the case also. At that time, he felt something known as a white racism. We have already discussed that. So, white racism means the white people, their belief that white people are only superior and other people, they are not superior. Okay. So, he had an incident like he was thrown out of the train. He was thrown out of the train in which he was going from Pietermaritzburg. In Pietermaritzburg in South Africa, he was thrown out of the train. Okay. Still, he stayed in South Africa from 1893 to 1914. So, after this incident, Gandhi understood that many Indians are also facing this thing. Okay. So, after this, his fight was for the rights of the Indians or maybe the other black people there. Okay. So, these were the people who were staying in South Africa. One is indentured labor. Indentured labor means they'll have some contract with this Britishers or maybe who are white people. So, it is like they won't be getting payment. They won't be getting the payment, but still they will be getting the some concessions like the food or maybe stay or some concession will be there. So, that is indentured labor. So, indenture is actually the contract which they will be signing, and also the merchants will also be there. So, they are the Mehman Muslims from the Gujarat region, and also once the contract is over, they have to again stay. Some people are staying there, so that is known as ex-indentured laborers. Everyone was actually facing these things. Okay, all right. So, initially Gandhi was thinking like same like how the Britishers, the moderate people of India was thinking. So, this was actually the thought which Gandhi also had. So, he believed in this British authority. So, he used to sign the petitions, he used to give the petitions to the people and all those things, the authorities, but still he understood that okay, nothing is going to work. Okay, so that he understood. So, after that he wanted to mobilize more people. He slowly went into the mass movement and he wanted to mobilize people. For that, he started the Natal Indian Congress. Natal Indian Congress. So, again, to unite the Indians so that everyone will be knowing what are their rights. So, that For that he has thing. And also another newspaper also he has brought in, that is the Indian Opinion. Indian Opinion he started in South Africa. Again, this was also to raise awareness among this Indian rights. Okay. Also, the Phoenix settlements, where it was like a earlier he had this ashram. So again, this was like a settlement. He was inspired by this Tolstoy and all, and he established something like this in there. Okay. So after that, he understood that okay, this is not going to work. The moderate approach to this Britishers is not going to work. So after that, he went into passive resistance. So he was of the opinion like we should not submit to unjust laws. Whatever it be, we should not submit to unjust laws, but still we should not follow violence also. We should do it in a non-violent way. Even if we want to, or even if we are getting provoked also, we should be doing it in a non-violent way. So that was Gandhi's ideology. Okay, we should not hate the oppressors. The cause, we should hate the cause only, but not the oppressors. That was also one of the important ideology. So in the last question which I have shown, you can add all these points. Okay, and also we should be able to have the willingness to suffer for all these causes. Should have the willingness to suffer for all these causes. Okay, so ultimately we should follow a non-violent path, and obviously our main passive resistance should be withdrawal of cooperation. We will not be cooperating with this unjust laws. Okay, so these were some of the important ideologies of Gandhi. Okay, so after this, Gandhi is coming back to India. 1915 January, Gandhi is coming back to India. So by that time, he became very popular. He became very popular among the Indians. And among the Indians, they understood that okay, some person has done all these things against the Europeans in the South Africa. So he was given a very grand welcome. But still he didn't join the Congress. When the Congress people, he had good connection with the Congress people, he didn't join the Congress. And he went for 1 year he went for a tour, to tour the country in 1916, 17, he went for a tour, and also he considered Gopal Krishna Gokhale as his his political godfather. Okay, so ultimately he studied India. 1 year, more than 1 year he studied India. So after that, in Bihar, one issue is happening in Bihar, that is in Champaran. In Champaran region of Bihar, major issue is happening. So that was related to the Teen Katiya system. Okay, so at that time Gandhi went for a conference in this Bihar. So at that time Rajkumar Shukla was one of the members of this Congress. So he was an indigo farmer also. Okay, so he called Gandhi, you should visit this place. You should understand what is happening here. Gandhi came and Gandhi understood that okay, this is actually an oppressive system. Oppressive system means, Teen Katiya system means in 3 among this 20 acres of the land, they have to grow indigo. Compulsorily they have to grow indigo. 3 out of the 20 acres, they have to compulsorily grow indigo. And the Britishers will be buying them for very cheap prices also. The contracts were very much unfair for them. Gandhi understood that okay, this is not going in a proper way. So at that time, Gandhi was already very much versed in this passive resistance. So at that time, Gandhi said, okay, we'll go with a civil disobedience. So what Gandhi did, he refused to follow this unjust law. And he challenged this peacefully. He challenged this oppression. And ultimately they had to establish an inquiry committee. And ultimately this system was abolished. Okay, so this was Gandhi's first civil disobedience movement, and he was successful in that also. Okay, so that was first civil disobedience movement, or maybe the first movement by Gandhi in the freedom struggle. Okay, all right. So after that, another important thing is also coming. After that was in 1917. So in 1918, Gandhi was again called to Ahmedabad. So Ahmedabad, the mill owners and the workers were having a conflict. Mill owners, obviously they were Europeans only. So they were having a conflict. So the mill owners, they were promised, so the mill workers, they were promised a plague bonus. So at that time this bubonic plague was going on, so they were promised a what plague bonus. So ultimately they didn't give the plague bonus, and also these workers, they were asking for an extra payment also. So that was 50% payment, 50% wage increase, 50% increase in the wage. So this was another demand. Gandhi came here and Gandhi understood that, okay, this is actually a genuine demand. The plague bonus as well as they need to have a increase in the wage also. Okay, so ultimately Gandhi went with a hunger strike. So this was actually the first hunger strike of Gandhi, that is Ahmedabad mill strike. Okay, so Gandhi said, I'll be fasting unto death. I'll be fasting unto death, and ultimately the government has to intervene. The government has to intervene, and they went with the talks with Gandhi. They said they'll be giving the bubonic plague, and also they some negotiations were also happening. So ultimately they said 35% wage increase. Gandhi was okay with it, workers were okay with this, and it was a negotiation, and the strike ended with a 35% increase in the wage. Again, this was also considered as a significant victory for the Gandhian ideology. Okay. Another important event is also happening, that is a Kheda Satyagraha. Kheda Satyagraha. Again, Kheda is also in Gujarat. Kheda is also in Gujarat. So Kheda, here there was a crop failure was there. Kheda, crop failure was there. So government was asking for the taxes, but crop failure, how will people pay for this taxes? They asked for a remission of the taxes, but ultimately government refused it. They said no, there will not be any taxes. There will not be any remission in the taxes. So Gandhi came. He supported the farmers. He said no, the drought came. There was a severe crop failure also. So how will they pay the taxes? So ultimately they protested, and this was Gandhi's first non-cooperation movement. So they withdraw from the cooperation of paying the taxes. Ultimately, the government had to suspend, or maybe they had to remit the taxes. Okay. All right. So this was Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. Okay. So Ahmedabad mill strike was Gandhi's first hunger strike. Okay. Kheda was Gandhi's first non-cooperation, and Champaran was Gandhi's first civil disobedience movement. Okay. So what was actually the gains from all these things? What is actually the lesson from all these things? One, Gandhi was able to demonstrate that through non-violent satyagraha itself, we'll be able to earn result. Okay. For getting results, we don't have to go with the violence. We can go with the non-violent satyagraha itself. So that was, he demonstrated it successfully. So more people understood that. More people understood, okay, this is a new ideology. It's not a moderate ideology, not the extremist ideology of mass participation, but still not the revolutionary ideology also, but still. So this earned the respect. This ensured that this earned the respect and loyalty of the masses, loyalty of the mass also. And also more, this gave the foundation for more mass-based political movement. Slowly Gandhi's reputation was also increasing. And ultimately Gandhi also said, okay, fine, we'll also people were also following Gandhi. Even the younger leaders like Nehru or maybe other leaders, they were also attracted with the Gandhi's new ideology also. So that was also going on. Okay. So ultimately now after this, Gandhi became a mass political leader. Okay. All right. So, but the ultimate success of Gandhi is coming later only, in the later period only. So that was with the Rowlatt Act. Okay. So Rowlatt Act means, Rowlatt Act was introduced. So this was something, officially the Rowlatt Act is known as Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act. So what is this Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act? This is actually the extension of the Defense of India Act. I have already mentioned regarding this Defense of India Act. So what is the Defense of India Act? Earlier itself mentioned. So it was actually to suppress the protest so that anyone can be, Defense of India Act means anyone can be arrested without any warrant. Also they can be kept in, without any trial itself, they can be kept under the prison. Okay, so this was defense of India. Again, this is also anarchical and revolutionary crimes act is also the extension of the same thing only. They can be for the extend this wartime repressions without any formal arrest warrant itself. They can be kept, and also their basic rights, including the fundamental rights, will also be not be there, and also the writ rights of the habeas corpus. So that will also be suspended. So this was actually the Rowlatt Act. Okay, Rowlatt Act. Arrest without warrant, suspense could be tried without jury, and also habeas corpus is also suspended. Okay, alright. So many people protested against this. Many people protested against this. Gandhi was also very much vocal in the protest on this Rowlatt Satyagraha. Also, major thing which happened is like the Indian members in this Imperial Council, so they resigned. Gandhi called it a black act. Gandhi called it as a black act. So the oppressive nature, they understood this actually the oppressive nature. So they started something known as Satyagraha Sabha. So now Gandhi's Satyagraha, ideology of Satyagraha, that was also becoming prominent, popular. Okay, so ultimately Satyagraha Sabhas were started, and also protests against this also happened. But still, not everything was peaceful. Gandhi, even though wanted to go with peaceful means, not everything was peaceful. Okay, violence also happened. So the major protest which happened against this was in Jallianwala Bagh. Jallianwala Bagh is in Amritsar in Punjab. So people were protesting. People gathered. People were protesting because as per the Rowlatt Act, 2 people were arrested. One was Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyabal. So they were arrested according to the provisions of the Rowlatt Act. So ultimately, this protest that turned violent. Okay, that turned violent. People were dispersed. People were going around, and this Jallianwala Bagh, the problem is there is only one entrance. Entrance exists. Everything is one only. So you have to get down through that area itself. So at that time, Governor General, the military commander was General Dyer. So what he did is like he ordered firing. And people were not, through the entry gate itself, people were not able to exit. And ultimately, most of the people who were part of this Jallianwala Bagh protest, so they died in this. They were killed in this gunfiring. Okay, so this happened, and this was one of the brutal incidents which happened in the British rule in India itself. Many civilians were there. Reported that. Official report, it's like around 380 people were dead, but more than that were also dead. Many were injured also, and everyone was unharmed also. Okay, so what was the response of the Indian leaders? Renunciation of titles like Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore. So these people renounced the knighthood, the Sir title, and also these titles were renounced, and also government also came up with repressions like martial law that was imposed in Punjab. Okay, so they wanted to ensure that no further violence is happening based on this Jallianwala Bagh massacre. But still, whatever it be, this is a very black incident in the history of India itself. But still, again, not just in India, but in outside India also, this was a very in Britain also people were sympathetic of this incident. Okay, all right. So anyway. The British government, so they formed a committee known as a Hunter Committee. Okay, so this Hunter Committee investigated what was actually the intent behind this. But ultimately, the Governor Dyer, General Dyer, he was not punished. Even though he was dismissed from the service, he was not punished. And some of these lawmakers, they said that whatever Dyer did, they justified the Dyer's action also. Okay, so that was also there, and the Indian leaders, they were very much angry regarding this. Okay, so that was and many of this later protests was fueled by this Jallianwala Bagh massacre also, especially the revolutionary activities as well as the later movements also. Okay, all right, we'll stop here. Next, we'll move on to the non-cooperation movement. We have the civil disobedience movement, Quit India movement, and finally the independence. Okay, all right. So that's it for today. So we have covered. We started from the British policies from 1773. We have covered important events like 1857 revolt and all these things. Now we are in 1920s. Okay, all right. So that's it for today. Thank you.